With the reimagining of Top Thrill Dragster into now Top Thrill 2, Cedar Point is probably going to have one of its busiest seasons yet. I'm very excited for the season, but because of that, there's also some things to be a little bit worried about. And today, we're going to talk about how we can avoid the crowds at Cedar Point on those busiest of days. So I hope you're ready. I hope you're excited. My best tips and tricks are coming your way. So let's go. What's up, cool people? Thank you guys so much for hanging out today. Today, we're talking about when to go, where to go, and what to do to avoid the most crowds at Cedar Point for both your sanity and your ability to do as many things as you possibly can this year while you are already, I'm sure, planning your Cedar Point trips. The very first thing we're going to talk about is when to go, so let's get into this. Now, Cedar Point can be incredibly busy, and I kind of like to think of it like you have different tiers, I guess, of busyness. Like, let's say Iron Dragon is at this tier right here, and then you have Steel Vengeance at this tier always. Now, the thing is, sometimes those can change. Like, depending on how busy the park is, it can be more like this instead of like this. Or if it's a really great time during the year, then it could be like this instead. Like, they're still going to always be busy, but on average, they're going to be less busy than some of the other rides. So my whole idea about avoiding horrible crowds at Cedar Point is to go when the damage can be as little as possible. Now, I know that doesn't always happen. That's not always a possibility for everyone, and we're going to get into that also if that's not a possibility for you. So wait till later in this video for that. But for right now, we're going to talk first about when to go because there are a couple times during the year when things can be a little bit less busy. One of those times during the year is right after opening weekend, but toward the beginning of the season. So the opening weekend caveat is at that point, a lot of people have planned their trips to be there for opening weekend. You've got a lot of enthusiasts or you have a lot of pass holders who just have always enjoyed Cedar Point, and they're going to be there on opening day if it's at all possible. So because of that, that day is going to be busier than your normal average would be. Other than that, things drop down for the beginning of the year, and then they steadily build kind of throughout the year, with the exception of like 1 week, maybe 2 weeks, where it kind of dips. And we'll talk about that in just a second here. But the more close to the beginning of the season you can get, the better. So if you have to come in June, then make it the beginning of June. If you have to come in July, it'd be better to make it toward the beginning of July. Although by that point, kids are out of school and it's very, very busy. I do find though that the majority of people are procrastinators. The majority of people don't really know when they want to go. And to some degree, this is projection because it's what I do, but it does seem to also be consistent with what I find in the parks when I'm there all the time. I'm at Cedar Point like once a week at least throughout the season and have been for the last 4 seasons. You can check out all those old videos if you would like to, because they'll tell you all kinds of things about past seasons at Cedar Point that will help inform you about what to expect this year. Because really that's what I do, is I just look at the trends and then I tell you guys what I see in the trends. But it's the same thing if you guys are watching them. You're still gonna kind of get a feel for how long it really has taken. But because of that, it builds slowly throughout the season. So the earlier on in the year you can come, the better you will be. Now, of course, beyond that, there are some other complications. Of course, weekdays are always less busy. So come on Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday, and those are gonna be your better options. Now, the opening weeks includes Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday until school gets off. So you actually have a pretty decent amount of time. Obviously, that doesn't include Tuesday, Wednesday. It does include Thursday. Your best bet at that point is to come on a Tuesday, come on a Monday, but come as often as you can. Of course, also, it's the beginning of the season and school is not off yet. Before school gets off, things are a little bit more gentle at the parks. Also, the main shows for the season aren't quite up and running. That kind of stuff all makes a difference in the amount of people that are coming to the parks. So when it's not quite running at full steam, sure, it's still a great time to come and see all the rides and do all that kind of stuff. But when it's not running full steam, you're going to have a little bit less people at the parks, which means you may actually get to do quite a bit more. So that's another quick tip, to be able to come at the very beginning before school gets out. Really, of course, any of these tips you can kind of narrow down to, is school in session? If school's in session, then you'll probably have a better bet of being able to come during that time rather than school being out of session. Holidays obviously are busier than the not holiday times. Those are just kind of givens with any kind of a theme park at all. Now, the park runs full steam all the way through August, and then like that, it changes. So the very first week of September, Cedar Point is only open on Sunday and Monday of that week. And then the second week of September, on September 7th and 8th, they're only open on September 7th and 8th. That's Saturday and Sunday of that week. And for both of those days, they're only open from 11 a.m. to 10 p.m. on Saturday and from 11 a.m. to 8 p.m. on Sunday. So you have just fewer hours than you normally would have, especially when they normally open at 10 or 9 o'clock. So there's just a little bit less incentive for people to come during those 2 weeks. Also, again, all the shows are gone. They've all been like shuttered for a moment so that they can open up a new set of shows during HalloWeekends. And this week, or this 2 weeks, is really them preparing for HalloWeekends for that whole time. So both of those weekends, when that happens, are just kind of going to be really low weekends. But especially the 7th and the 8th, coming those 2 days, is going to be incredibly low. There's going to be almost no one there. You could not get a fast lane and still ride every single coaster at Cedar Point, and I have done it before. I recommend incredibly highly, if there is any possibility for you to take off time during the 7th and the 8th of September, to come to Cedar Point during those 2 times, especially if you're a thrill seeker. These are your 2 biggest times to get away from the crowds and to have the most sedate, wonderful time being able to ride as much as you possibly can. Because most people don't want to plan their trips because they go, well, I'd rather go for HalloWeekends. And right now we're not having HalloWeekends. So you have mostly people who are there just as people who are either local or people who have season passes. And so in that case, you end up with just this wonderful time of just being able to do whatever you want. If you have kids and they want to ride rides, but they don't want to stand in lines, it's a perfect time to come and visit with them. Or anyone else who doesn't want to wait in lines, which frankly, I think all of us are in that boat, right? I don't think any of us want to stand in lines. After that, we have HalloWeekends. And HalloWeekends is one of the most fun times for me, partly because there is a huge emphasis on shows during that time. Shows and HalloWeekends, like horror houses. So those are so much fun for me altogether. They are open on Thursdays. Now, one caveat with Thursday is, first of all, they're open only from 6 p.m. to 12 a.m. Which I kind of love. It's nice. It's a half day. They bring people in that have day jobs, and then they can come during that time. Now on Sundays, they're open from 11 a.m. to 8 p.m. and kids activities do not happen on Thursdays, but they will happen on the rest of the weekend. So you can come for those days, but those are things that I would look out for, just in case those are things that you are looking for in your HalloWeekends trips. Now, the best love letter that Cedar Point has ever done is opening on Thursdays for HalloWeekends. And I have noticed that Thursdays have become more and more popular still. They are still by far less busy. Remember, the weekend up here. When I say they're more busy, the weekend is up here, and now Thursday is down here still, even though it's gone up a notch. It's not as busy as the rest of the time by any means. Those Thursdays are fantastic days to come to Cedar Point and to ride everything. Get into all your haunted houses. Just get as much done as you possibly can. Also, toward the end of the night during Halloween weekends, the best thing to do is to hit those haunted houses in the last hour, because the last hour there's almost nothing there. Everybody's trying to hit their last ride on Maverick, and they have not done anything with the haunted houses then. So they all hit haunted houses at the very beginning. It usually starts, I think, at like 7 o'clock, something like that, when all the haunted houses open up. And then everyone stands in massive lines for that. But you can get in at the very last minute. So those are usually my biggest tips to be able to help you get as much done during Halloween weekends. And of course, we'll flesh that out a lot more throughout the season, especially as Halloween weekends draws closer. So press that subscribe button for us to be able to show you all the best tips and tricks throughout the season, because things change. I mean, there may be something that I've said in here that is a rule of thumb at this point, because it's been a rule of thumb for the last 3 years, and all of a sudden Iron Dragon has the most lines of anything. Or it could just be something like, we have Top Thrill 2 now, and Top Thrill 2 is drawing all of the attention, which means now Millennium Force really isn't that busy. So I'll be able to help you navigate those waters a little bit more specifically and clearly as the year goes on, and be able to tell you, wow, it looks like Millennium Force is a lot less busy this year. That's where I recommend you go. I don't know what's going to happen, but those are possibilities of things that could happen. You only know if you're subscribed and if you check out these videos from time to time. Also, we just love having you guys here. So press that subscribe button to be cool people along with the rest of us. Obviously, we're all cool, right? Right? Now, we're going to talk about where to go first. I realize that there are a lot of you who cannot just choose a time to come. You have a family vacation that is planned. That time is set in stone, and you're going to come during, I don't know, July 15th or whatever the date is that you have set. That's the time when you decided you're going to come. You're going to be spending 4 days at Cedar Point that time, no matter what. And when that happens, not all is lost. You haven't killed your time at Cedar Point. You haven't made it bad, nothing like that. There's still a ton of stuff that you can do to make things a little bit better for you, both on like a psychological level where you just want to maybe escape people, and on the side of things where you just don't want to wait as long for certain rides. There are strategies that you can get. So let's talk through those just a little bit here. Now, my very first thing that I think you need to do is think counterintuitively. It's my biggest piece of advice. Every single person at Cedar Point is thinking about something that they want to do. And the majority of them are not consuming videos like this, trying to get tips and tricks for what they should do. The majority of them are trying just to look at the park, and they've just come in. They didn't really think about it in advance. They just thought, well, we're gonna go to Cedar Point today. And now they've walked in and immediately they're like, whoa, there's so many rides. Where should we go? Hey, I see a huge green ride right in front of me. Let's go hit that one. Or hey, I know Millennium Force, so let's go hit Millennium Force right now. Or hey, I heard Top Thrill 2 just opened, so we should go to that one. It's not because they've done research, it's not because they've thought it out, it's just because that's where they want to go. So the majority of people are thinking those kinds of things. So if they are thinking something, then how can you think differently than them? That's kind of the biggest thing that I encourage people to do, is try to think counterintuitively. Think about what everybody else would want to do and do the opposite. So one of my biggest things that I encourage people to do is to think in tiers. If you can have different tiers of rides in your head, things that are going to hit a little bit differently with each ride and the way that they kind of each work. So I've actually divided up the rides today into 4 different tiers for us to talk about today. So for my tier 1, I have big lines all day long. Now, for this one, I have 5 different rides that way because Cedar Point has some massive bangers, and they do have some rides that really do have just a long time all day long when there is just line after line after line, and the line just continues to be big no matter what. Those rides are Millennium Force, Steel Vengeance, Maverick, Top Thrill 2, and Valraven. Now, I almost said Valraven should be in the tier underneath it, but all day long, I've always experienced that Valraven has a massive long line. No matter what situation you're in, that's what I find. So I would always still recommend to treat that ride like a top tier ride. Now, top tier rides, usually I say don't go to them at the very beginning of the day, because if you do, they are going to have long lines. Everybody runs to those lines. So why would you want to go stand in a long line where everyone else is standing while there are still rides that have much shorter lines? And that's what I think you should do. You should either choose something from tier 2 or tier 3, but usually not even tier 2. So let's talk about tier 2 next. Tier 2, I have rides that start huge and end small. So at the very beginning of the day, lots of people come in. Again, they come in, they see Raptor, or they go right underneath Gatekeeper and they go, hey, how can we get to that ride? Let's go ride that one. So they all get in that line. Another one that I have for that is Wild Mouse, because it's a newer ride, and I still think a lot of people will be like, hey, we want to hit Wild Mouse. I heard last year it had some really long lines. Those are things that they're going to come up with from hearsay from other people. So you want to be prepared that that's going to be something that you're not going to do. You're not going to wait in long lines for those. So instead, I don't even say go for tier 2. I say go for tier 3. So my tier 3 instead, the way I characterize these rides is they start small at the beginning of the day, they get big in the middle of the day, and then they get small again at the end of the day. They're small enough rides that nobody feels like they need to be the absolute first priority, but they're also big enough rides that people want to get to them. So they end up being really inflamed in the middle of the day, but then they go back down because everyone prioritizes, as they should, the rides that they want to ride at the very beginning of the day or at the very end of the day, especially the end of the day. The very last few minutes of the park is your best time to hit the longest line that you're going to hit throughout the day, because they're not going to usually close down that line, which means you can hop in that line and be able to hit it. And it doesn't matter. If it closes at 10 o'clock and you got in line at 9:58, then you can still stay in line for the rest of that hour and a half or however long that wait's gonna be at the end of the day. So that's a great thing to do. But because of that, these lines don't usually get huge priority from people at the beginning of the day, and they don't usually get huge priority from people at the end of the day, because they vacated those for the other rides that they really want to hit or that they want to get a night ride on or whatever. So these rides, I would say, are Corkscrew, Pipe Scream, Magnum, and Gemini, and especially Magnum and Gemini. Those are the big ones that I know a lot of people are still going to want to hit, and they're great ones to hit at the very beginning of the day. Hit those rides. I've had multiple times when I've come into the park a little bit late, even like, let's say like 9:30, the park opened at 9 o'clock, early entry was at 8 o'clock, something like that. And I've been able to walk back to Gemini, hit it, and then hit the next ride, and then hit the next ride, or vice versa. Maybe hit Corkscrew first, and then hit Magnum, and then hit Gemini. When those rides still in the afternoon are gonna get hour-long waits or 45-minute waits, instead you can hit one after another as you come in at 9:30 and be able to ride those really quickly. So those are great ones to be able to hit. Now, I wouldn't necessarily recommend that if you're there at the very opening of the park, or if you are there for early park entry, but early park entry kind of throws a wrench into all of this. So that's kind of the problem. On top of that, we have tier 4. Now, tier 4 would be rides that generally just keep shorter lines all day long. Cedar Creek Mine Ride, Blue Streak, Iron Dragon, and the kids coasters would all be included in this. And these are rides that are going to usually not elicit any kind of a line whatsoever throughout the day. They're always going to be smaller. They're always going to be less of a problem. So I would say that those ones are ones to kind of wait throughout the day. If it just feels like all the lines have massive, massive lines, then hit some of the smaller rides. That's always a good way to be able to do it. Just hit something quickly and move on. Or at the beginning of the day, if you find you have a little bit of extra time, then that's another time to be able to use that. If you've got some other longer lines, but those are still really short, then hit those quickly. Because I'd rather hit those at a 5-minute wait than hit them at a 25-minute wait, especially if I can hit them an hour or two into the beginning of the day. That just gives me a lot more time to be able to do other things with later on, rather than needing to spend 30 minutes on some smaller rides. Now, I did mention if you come in for the very beginning of the day, there may be some other things that you need to do. At the very beginning of the day, especially if you have early park entry, then you may be able to come in and get right onto Millennium Force, and then you've gotten one of your big ones off of your list. If you are able to run straight to the back and get there to Steel Vengeance before anyone else has, and you're able to get on it right away, I never stand in line for it. Don't, like, if you're standing in line for it while the rest of the park is open, then you're just waiting an extra 20 minutes for that ride. It's counterintuitive in a bad way. Don't do that. But if it's open right away and you can walk right on it, and you have a 5-minute wait or a 10-minute wait, and you know you would normally have a 60-minute wait for that ride, then that's way better. So getting those out of the way are always options. There have been times when I've walked in and I've seen Raptor is at what's very clearly a 10-minute wait. You can walk down kind of a sidewalk and you can see into the queue. So as I walked back there, I was like, wow, there's nobody back here. Let's hop in line. So I went straight in line and got that. Also, if you have a fast lane or you wanted to buy an individual fast lane for a certain ride, then that's another great time to use that if you want to. You could hop in that and get in really, really fast to another ride and be able to do that. Maybe not at the very beginning of the day, but maybe shortly after. That may be a great way to do it. Use whatever your shortest lines are to your most advantage, no matter what the situation is. And use the app as an option to give you kind of an idea. Now, the app is not always right. It's often not right, but it is a resource that you have that can give you kind of an idea of where the lines are everywhere throughout the park. So I would definitely not be afraid to go check that out if you would like to, and use the app to your advantage to get you back in the general vicinity of where the lines are not the longest. Now, I usually would not say though, go to the front or to the back of the park. I would usually say go to the middle of the park one way or another. Hit rides like Rougarou, like Iron Dragon, hit rides like Millennium Force even, if you're there at a right time to be able to hit it. Those are good times to be able to try to get your rides from the different tiers done fairly quickly. So if you can hop in and get all your tier 3 rides out, then you can start working on tier 4 or just start working on tier 1 and use that time where you would have been waiting in a long line no matter what. So now you're waiting in a long line anyway, but at least you got out your smaller rides before that. And while they still had very, very short lines. So now you don't need to wait in 20-minute lines or 30-minute lines. Instead, you got to wait in 5-minute lines for all of those. It's a really good counterintuitive strategy to get a ton of rides done. Now, to beat the crowds though, on top of that, now we're talking more psychologically, just places where I want to go, where I can get away from people. People are gross, people are smelly, and they do stupid things. So I don't want to be close to people sometimes. So if I don't want to be close to people and I want to try to get away from them as much as I can, then these are the great places where you can go visit. One of them is the smoking areas. Now you cannot smoke inside of Cedar Point at all anymore, but The areas that used to be designated as smoking areas still exist inside the park. And because of that, you can hang out inside the park and have kind of some areas where you can sit down and relax. These are great napping spots for kids, and they're also great little spots where you can rest, just take a load off and be able to settle down for the day a little bit. So those are a great spot where you can go visit. On top of that, you also have the Prestige Pass tent. You can go check that out if you have a Prestige Pass. It's not one I'm going to dwell on very long, but go check it out if you would want to. It does obviously cost more money, and it is also something you can buy without a Prestige Pass if you just want a place for grandma to be able to hang out and then come join you whenever she wants to. There's air conditioning in it, or not air conditioning, but fans. There's water you can get and chips you can also get. Just a cooler spot in the shade for you to be able to relax. Also some TVs to watch, things like that. Also, going to the beach, that may be just as good of an area as the Prestige tent. Honestly, hang out on the beach. You can hang out there. There are even cabanas you can rent, but you can listen to the waves. You can lay on a beach towel. You can build a sandcastle, do whatever you want. There's even drinks there. And also Hotel Breakers is another part of this. Hotel Breakers has everything inside of it that you may need. I used to take naps there with my daughter. We just hang out at Hotel Breakers. She'd be in her stroller and I would take a nap. There's a Starbucks there. There's a whole bunch of different things that you could need, even a couple of different restaurants. It's a great place in the air conditioning for you to be able to hang out at Cedar Point and be able to cool off a little bit and stay away from people a bit more. There's never massive crowds in there. I mean, you may get a line at Starbucks or something, but you're not going to have just tons of people around you, and it's a much better area to be able to relax just a little bit and take a load off. Also, a lot of different spots that you could go that are a little bit more out of the way. Down by the ice cream shop, you could walk down there. You could go up into the main circle area.
It's the rotunda, you buffoon.
And that main circle area has several different levels, and in each of those levels there's a little spot where you can sit by some windows. Like, there's just lots of little spots. If you walk around the hotel a little bit, you'll find all kinds of little places that are out of the way where you can just relax a little bit more and allow yourself to feel a little bit better after being in a crowded area all day long. Now, on the entire other side of the park, if you walk all the way through to the other side, you will find the Marina. And over on the Marina, there is a large area where you can walk. It's a beautiful green space. There's also a barbecue place there that you can stop at, Famous Dave's, and there's like a little store there too where you could even get a drink there if you wanted to, just for a lot cheaper. You could buy like a case of beer with some friends, sit down, hang out. You could have a little bit of just a space there to be able to hang out and do whatever you wanted to do. There's just a lot more space there to be able to do whatever you wanted to. Have a picnic, hang out with your dog, whatever you wanted. Of course, that is also a space where if you have a yacht, then you could actually dock the yacht there. And docking for the whole year there would give you kind of some perks, like you get passes and stuff like that to be able to go to Cedar Point. So there's just a lot of fun things that you can do out there on the Marina, and another great place to get away from people. Also very close to the Marina is the picnic area, just on the other side of Blue Streak, toward the very front of the park. And you can hang out right there. You could have a little picnic. You could get it from your car, come in, have a few little picnic tables there where you can hang out. It's not covered. It used to be like a larger picnic area that was covered and all that. It is not that anymore, but now there's still picnic tables there. You could just hang out, have a little bit of a space to do that. And again, you never have massive lines there. You do hear the screams of people going over Blue Streak, but that's all. Also, near the train entrance in Frontier Town is also a really fun spot. So you have the train, and then you also have Maverick on the other side of that. And then there's this large area where you have just something nice to be able to hang out in. that is just a little area where there's nothing. There's a few flower boxes, and there's like a place to eat fairly close by, but there's nothing that's just there that's taking up people's time. So it's a great place to sit. There's some little chairs that you can rock in. You could just sit there and have some fun and watch people, and it'd be a really nice area to just relax a little bit. Actually, Frontier Town is rife with a lot of spaces like that. There are lots of rocking chairs all around inside of the awnings in front of the storefronts. So if you just wanted to sit there, if you wanted to have something to eat, have something to drink, and just watch people, it's definitely worthwhile for that. Now, my last thing, and the horse that I'll beat until I die, is that shows are an awesome place to go visit. I love shows so much. There are just so many fun shows to be able to go watch. And yes, often they do get fairly full, but often they're also inside of some sort of air conditioning. And it is so nice to be able to hang out in the air conditioning and relax. You do not need to worry about anything. You're just there watching a show. One of the ones that I would recommend the most would be actually Red Garter. And that's not even necessarily for a show, because they also serve food in there and they serve drinks in there. You could easily go sit there and you could get a drink and just relax. Just sit there and watch what's happening, or just be able to cleanse yourself of hearing people all day long, of the noise of the theme park, and just be able to not worry about any of that. If you just want a spot to be able to sit down and hang out and relax and talk to friends, that is a perfect spot to be able to do that, either in between shows or before the shows start during the day. There are times when it's open when they don't even have shows, and again, would be worthwhile to go check that out if you wanted to grab something to eat or something to drink inside of there. So it's definitely worthwhile to go check that one out also. But of course, any of the indoor shows are great, and even the outdoor shows, it's again is a nice spot where you can just kind of, you're not away from people. As a matter of fact, people are going to be closer to you, but at least they're not moving everywhere. I don't know if you know that, if you feel this way at all or not, but every once in a while it just feels in a really crowded area like your inner GPS is just rerouting constantly. You're like someone walks into your path and you're like, okay, rerouting this way now and this way, and then a kid gets in your way and oh no, this way now. That's part of the stress of it. When you're at a show, you can just sit there and watch what's happening in front of you. You don't need to worry about someone getting in your way, walking in front of you, things like that. So you don't have that internal GPS happening. So that can just kind of relax your mind a little bit and let you go and just do something for a half hour while a show is going on. So even the outdoor shows, I think, are definitely worthwhile, even when they draw massive crowds. So thank you guys so much. Let me know, is there some place that you think would be out of the way that you really recommend people to go check out? And also tell me down below, with the new invention, I guess, of Top Thrill 2, what do you think is going to happen with that? Is it going to be crowds like crazy? Or maybe will the crowds just be displaced to Top Thrill 2 and not to every other ride? I'd love to hear what your thoughts are down in the comments. Thank you guys so much for hanging out. Please feel free to comment. I'd just love to hear from you guys one way or another. Also, press that like button, because if you've made it to this point, you definitely need to press that like button. You either liked or hated something, so one way or another, it's engagement for me. Also, press that subscribe button and you can say that you were here before 10,000 subscribers, which is the road that we're on right now. We are on our way to 10,000 subscribers. Thank you guys so much for hanging out today, and let's go!
Hey, thanks for watching. I release theme park related videos at least a couple times a week, so press that subscribe button if you made it this far. Also, check out similar videos in the playlist to the right, or find my newest video to the left. Thanks again, and let's go!